It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a fight. It was just a message from someone who wasn't me. And yet, what happened next wasn't revenge. It was something more honest. Something no one expected. Not even me. If you've ever wondered what you do when the line between loyalty and curiosity begins to blur, stay with me. This is not a story of betrayal. It's a story of awakening, of bold choices, and of what happens when we stop pretending we're okay. My name is Elena. I'm 33. I work in brand strategy, and I've been married to Miles for 6 years. And yet, nothing prepared me for how quiet a shift can be. Not loud like you imagine betrayal should be, but soft, almost gentle, like a note in the wrong key that lingers just long enough to make you pause. That night, the dining room was dim, the wine breathing in wide glasses, our plates still warm. It was a typical Thursday, routine, predictable, safe. Until it wasn't. Miles stood up to refill our glasses. He left his phone face up on the table, casually, like any man who has nothing to hide. But the screen lit up, and a name appeared. Chloe. A short preview followed. You always make my day brighter. 6 words. That's all. And yet something in me shifted. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't even lean in. I didn't need to. Because the message didn't need to be explicit. It only needed to feel not meant for me. Chloe wasn't a stranger. She worked at Miles's company. A designer. Mid-20s. I'd seen her at a few events. Smart. Well-spoken. The kind of woman who compliments you just a second too long, then looks away with a smile like she's letting you keep a secret. She'd never done anything inappropriate. Neither had he. Not technically. But then again, not all betrayals wear the label. Some simply exist in the in-between. Unguarded laughter, late-night replies, emojis with meanings left intentionally unclear. What startled me most wasn't the message. It was my own stillness. I didn't feel the rush of anger or the sting of jealousy. I just felt present. Clear. Like my mind finally stopped negotiating with what my heart had already sensed. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't ask questions. I simply sat back, took a slow sip of wine, and smiled when Miles returned to the table. He didn't know I'd seen it, and I didn't tell him. Not yet. Because sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's preparation. And what I was preparing for wasn't a confrontation. It was clarity. We ate dinner like we always did. The salad was slightly overdressed. The steak, perfectly medium rare. Miles asked about my day, about the client call I had in the afternoon. I smiled, gave him answers, pushed the conversation forward like a well-rehearsed script. I even laughed at one of his jokes, but I wasn't really there, not the way I used to be, because while my hands cut food and my voice filled the pauses, my thoughts kept circling back to those 6 words, to her name on his screen, to the way his phone rested between us, like a silent witness. He didn't notice, or maybe he did. Maybe he felt it too, the air just a little denser than before. The way my eyes held us a second too long, not accusing, but searching. Not angry, just alert. I didn't ask, "Who is she to you?" because I already knew who she wasn't. Me. After dinner, we watched a show. Something light, forgettable. His arm around my shoulder, my head resting against him. From the outside, we looked like everything was fine. And that's the thing about long relationships. You learn how to play normal even when something inside you has already changed shape. We went to bed just after 10. Miles kissed me goodnight. I kissed him back. No test. Just lips meeting out of memory, not meaning. Then the lights went off. And we lay there, quiet, still. But I didn't sleep, because something about that message, about the woman who wasn't me, and the version of him I didn't quite recognize, kept me awake. It wasn't jealousy. It was curiosity. Not about Chloe, but about us. About what we were slowly becoming, and what I might be willing to do. Before we became strangers sharing the same bed. I didn't move at first. Miles lay beside me, his breath slow, even. The room was still, wrapped in that peculiar calm that comes just before a decision is made. My body was quiet, but my mind was wide awake, not racing, just listening. To the ache. To the space between us that had once felt like home, and now felt like a hallway I couldn't quite cross. And then, without a word, I did something unexpected. I turned toward him, not to confront, not to ask, but to feel. I placed my hand on his chest, slowly, letting the warmth of my palm tell him something I wasn't ready to say aloud. I'm still here, but I've noticed. He stirred, not startled, but aware. I leaned in and kissed him, not out of habit, not out of duty, but out of choice. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't planned. It was controlled, intentional, a kind of intimacy that carried weight, not heat. His body responded, gently, then fully, as if something long muted had remembered its own rhythm. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask what was wrong. Maybe because he already knew something was shifting. He just hadn't looked at it directly yet. And when it was over, when he lay there catching his breath in the dark, I reached for the phone he'd left charging on the nightstand. I opened the message thread with Chloe. No passcode needed. I held it up between us and whispered, "She thinks you're funny." He blinked, looked at the screen, then looked at me. "She's just being nice," he said, half a chuckle, trying to play it light. I tilted my head, offering a faint smile. Not bitter, not sarcastic, just real. "You think she's bold?" I said, brushing my lips just above his ear. "Watch me." The next morning, the sun came in soft and gold through the curtains, like nothing had changed. Miles left early, said he had a client meeting in Redmond. I didn't ask for details. He kissed me goodbye, left a small note by the coffee machine, just like always. "You've got this. Thursday's your big campaign. Love you." I stared at the handwriting for a while, his words as warm as ever, his tone as consistent as the man I married. And yet, there was a space between the letters now. A pause I hadn't noticed before. I sipped my coffee slowly, thinking not about Chloe, but about something far more dangerous. What would happen if I didn't pretend this time? I picked up my phone, opened the message app, and typed, "Hi, Chloe. Are you free this afternoon? Nothing serious. Just wanted to talk for a bit." I didn't overthink the wording. I didn't draft it twice, because something in me had already moved past justification. She responded almost instantly. "Elin, I'm sure. Is everything okay?" I typed back, "Absolutely. But if you bring coffee and a good excuse to leave the office early, even better." There was a pause. Then the bubble appeared. "Give me 40 minutes. I didn't rush to get ready. I put on music, something quiet, slow, just under the skin. I drew the blinds, wiped down the glass coffee table, and chose a soft, earth-tone dress. Loose, elegant, Feminine without trying, not seductive, not defensive, just honest. When the knock came, it was 3 light taps. Hesitant, polite, like she still wasn't sure if she should be here. But I was already standing at the door, waiting. Chloe stood at my door holding 2 coffees, her fingers wrapped tightly around the cups like they were the only steady thing in her world. She looked unsure, polished, but not quite composed. A white blouse, soft gray pencil skirt, and eyes that darted from me to the hallway behind her. I opened the door fully, but didn't step aside immediately. "Hi," she said, lifting one of the cups. "Merit coffee." I didn't know how you take it, so I guessed. I looked at her for a long second, not to intimidate her, but to let the moment breathe. "You're prettier than me," I said quietly. "You know that, right?" She blinked. Froze. What? "Come in," I said finally, stepping back. She walked in carefully, like someone called to the front of a class with no idea what the lesson was. Her eyes scanned the room. My books, the light, the quiet. I took the coffee from her hand. Our fingers touched, just lightly, but long enough. We sat across from each other on the edge of the couch, the silence hanging not heavy, but charged. She finally asked, "Did you want to talk about something?" I smiled, not cold, just real. "Yes." "About Miles. And about you. And about me too. But not the way you think." She didn't run. She sat there, coffee in hand, waiting, not with arrogance, not with fear, but with curiosity. And I realized this wasn't a confrontation. This was an invitation to clarity, to boundaries, to the soft, strange pull of something we don't have words for yet. Chloe's coffee sat untouched on the table between us. She was still holding the cup, but I don't think she even realized. I could see it in her posture. The stiffness, the subtle retreat into herself. She thought she'd walked into an ambush, but I hadn't brought her here to accuse. I had brought her here to see, and not just her, myself too. I sat back, crossing one leg over the other, not to assert power, but to soften the room. "I'm not here to make you feel small," I said gently. "I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're human, and maybe a little curious, just like I am." She swallowed, said nothing. Her eyes didn't leave mine, but they weren't combative. They were searching. I saw the message. I added, nodding once. No pause for drama. No raised voice. Just a fact placed on the table between us like another cup of coffee. Chloe looked down, her thumb tracing the side of the paper sleeve. It wasn't meant to be anything. Just friendly. I gave a soft smile. "I believe that. And also, I believe you felt something. Even if it surprised you." She looked up. "Do you think I crossed a line?" I tilted my head. "Do you?" She hesitated, and then just barely nodded. There it was. Not guilt, not shame, but something far more powerful. Recognition. I reached over slowly, brushed a loose strand of hair away from her cheek. She flinched at first, then stilled. Her breath caught. "I'm not angry," I said quietly, "but I am curious." That was the moment. The hinge in the door. The breath before something shifts. We hadn't touched beyond that. Not yet. But the space between us, whatever it was no longer empty. It was awake. The silence between us didn't grow awkward. It grew meaningful. Not the kind of silence that waits to be broken, but the kind that says, if you stay quiet long enough, you might actually hear yourself. Chloe sat still. Her shoulders weren't tense anymore. Her coffee had long gone cold, untouched. But her presence, it was wide awake. I stood up, walked slowly to the window, then turned back toward her. "You didn't plan any of this," I said softly. "Neither did I." She nodded, like someone finally allowing herself to stop pretending. I crossed the space between us, not with intention to provoke, but with permission. The kind of permission that isn't about touch, but about truth. And then I asked her a question, one I never thought I'd ask anyone outside the quiet of my own mind. Have you ever felt something for someone and didn't know if it was attraction or simply a mirror being held up to you? Her lips parted slightly, maybe to answer, maybe just to breathe. "I didn't bring you here to trap you," I said. "I brought you here to meet the version of me that stopped pretending everything was fine." I sat beside her, close but not touching, not yet. And I looked at her, not as a threat, not as my husband's coworker, but as a woman who had, maybe unintentionally, touched something inside me I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. And then I reached for her hand, not forcefully, not flirtatiously, just honestly. Her fingers curled slightly around mine. She didn't speak. She didn't pull away. She stayed. And in that quiet, still room, where no one raised their voice or made a scene, something began. Not an affair, not a betrayal, but a recognition between two women. One who thought she knew herself, and one who had no idea how much she was about to learn. We didn't hear the door open. The lock turned softly. No islam. No warning. Just the quiet click of someone returning to their life and stepping into something they didn't expect. Chloe and I were sitting on the couch, still holding hands, still breathing carefully in that fragile space between understanding and uncertainty. When Miles appeared at the edge of the living room, keys still in his hand, he didn't speak. He just stood there. His eyes shifted from me to Chloe, then back to me. And I didn't flinch. I didn't stand up to explain. I didn't rush to cover anything up, because there was nothing to hide. Only truth. Quiet. Honest. Unfolding. I looked at him and said gently, "Come sit." He hesitated, not because he was angry, but because he didn't yet know if he was allowed. And that's what struck me. How often we live in roles we never questioned. How often we wait for permission to feel something new. He moved slowly toward us, as if approaching a moment he hadn't studied for. I reached for his hand. He let me take it. I placed his hand next to Chloe's. She didn't pull away. No one said the word forgive. No one said betrayal. No one needed to label what was happening, because in that moment, what we chose wasn't a solution. It was a pause in the pretending. That night, the three of us didn't try to fix anything. We didn't create rules. We didn't define what we were becoming. We simply let it happen. A shift in presence, a dismantling of the script. We lay there together. No tension. No explanations, just skin against skin, just breath aligning, just a stillness none of us had expected, but all of us, somehow, understood. The next morning, I woke before the others. Light was filtering in through the skylight, soft and golden. The house was quiet, except for the low hum of the coffee machine. I sat at the kitchen counter, wrapped in Miles's shirt, Chloe's hair still damp from sleep, tucked over her shoulder on the pillow beside mine. Miles appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "You're not going back to bed?" I shook my head. "No. I just want to remember how this morning feels before the world asks us to explain it." He didn't ask for a plan. He didn't ask for clarity. He just stood there, looking at me like he hadn't in years, like he was seeing the real me. Not the wife, not the forgiver, just the woman who stopped pretending and finally told the truth with her presence, not her words. So, here's my question to you. If you were the one walking in and saw something you didn't expect, but felt something honest instead of shameful, would you freeze or would you sit down? Would you retreat or reach out? This story isn't about being right. It's about being real. And if you've made it to this moment, maybe a part of you is ready to feel something you haven't allowed before. Don't explain it. Just let it breathe.